5 Thanksgiving and Black Friday shopping horror stories. The Thanksgiving holiday, for most, is a day to give thanks for family, friends, and bountiful food. Some families also look forward to the day after Thanksgiving, where they can buy presents for loved ones at bargain prices. Sounds like a Norman Rockwell painting, but sometimes that portrait becomes splattered with blood, like in these 5 true tales of Thanksgiving and Black Friday horror. Number 1. Our first story is one of the beautiful Omaima Nelson, who butchered more than a turkey on Thanksgiving Day 1991. This twisted love story began in beautiful Huntington Beach, California, where Omaima and Bill Nelson met over a game of pool. It was only weeks later that the beautiful Egyptian immigrant and Bill Nelson drove to Phoenix and got married. Bill was a man that was used to enjoying the finer things in life, and he considered Omaima to be one of them. Bill was wealthy, and Omaima was beautiful. What could go wrong? Well, to begin with, they both brought a troubled past to the relationship. As for Omaima, she had left her poor and abusive past in southern Egypt, looking for a better life in the United States. Instead, she found a life of gold digging. Bill had served time for smuggling drugs. If that wasn't enough, Bill was still legally married to another woman when he married Omaima. Bill's family and friends were suspicious of Bill's young bride. She was even younger than some of Bill's kids. Regardless, the couple returned to Southern California to begin their life together. On Thanksgiving Day, that was the last time the two would speak. Omaima would later claim that on that day, Bill raped her. She then lured him to the bed for consensual bondage. She tied him up and proceeded to cut off his head and genitals. The crime report stated Omaima deep-fried her husband's hands, boiled his head, and chopped up other parts of him to eat with the Thanksgiving leftovers. Omaima wasn't able to dispose of all of her husband by eating him, so she turned to an ex-boyfriend. She drove to the home of Jose Esquivel. Omaima told him that she had her husband's head in the freezer and that she would pay him $75,000 to dispose of the rest of him. Jose would not be tempted by the money and called the police to turn her in. The scene that greeted police would haunt them forever. The body of Bill Nelson was in various garbage bags scattered around the house. The sink was clogged with his remains. The head was still in the freezer. A leading criminal psychologist said that Omaima had become obsessed with the color of Bill's blood and wore a red hat and red lipstick to match the blood. He said Omaima had claimed to hear the dismembered body parts speaking to her, begging her to be eaten, and she spoke back. Number 2. Murder can happen any time of year, but for one Florida family, Thanksgiving turned to terror when Paul Michael Marriage turned on his family and said, "I've been waiting 20 years to do this," and did the unthinkable. The family gathering at Cousin Jim Sitton's upscale Florida home had been festive with no outward signs of tension, but it was what was inside Paul that would lead him to murder. Jim Sitton said he had not seen Paul in years and was not aware that he was going to be in attendance. Still, Paul was greeted with open arms by the family. Paul began to methodically pick off his victim, shooting his twin sisters Carla and Lisa. To add to the tragedy, Lisa was pregnant. He then moved on to his 76-year-old aunt. He shot her, and as his uncle was trying to stop the bleeding, Paul walked to her and held the gun directly to her chest and shot, shattering her clavicle. Paul had not planned on his next, and perhaps most disturbing kill, that of his young cousin 6-year-old Michaela. Earlier in the day, Michaela's singing had delighted the family, and this caused a jealousy so severe in Paul that he walked into the room where she slept and shot her. He proceeded to walk out of the room, then changed his mind, returned and shot the sleeping child again. His mother, Carol Marriage, recalls semi-jokingly saying that she hoped Paul wouldn't kill them all while they ate. I guess some things should never be joked about. Number 3. On November 22nd, 2012, a series of events would happen that would end in the murder of 2 teens at the hands of a man claiming he was defending his castle. Byron David Smith was a retired state worker. He had been the victim of several home robberies. In fact, the whole neighborhood had seen a rise in home robberies. Byron decided to install a high-tech surveillance system that would allow him many views of the area surrounding his home. Video from that day showed Byron moving his truck to another area in an attempt to make it seem that he was not in the home. He then proceeded to stock up on energy bars, water bottles, and a loaded rifle. Byron then went into his basement with his supplies and a tape recorder and proceeded to wait. Hours later, Haley Elaine Kiefer, 18, and Nicholas Brady, 17, were captured on camera casing the area. Haley and Nicholas had committed some of the robberies in the area. All the while, Byron sat in his basement, creating a monologue and also a confession. I refuse to live in fear. I am not a bleeding heart liberal. I'm cleaning up a mess. I don't see them as human. They are vermin. Are these the words of someone who is premeditating murder? Eventually, Haley and Nicholas took the bait of an empty house around the holiday season and broke into the basement window. They were confronted with Byron and his loaded gun. Byron shot Nicholas first, and he went down. But that wasn't enough. He shot him 3 more times. He then proceeded to shoot Haley. Byron was still recording, as Haley can be heard begging for her life as he taunted her and the dead body of her cousin. Byron was going to deliver the death shot to Haley when his gun jammed. He jokingly can be heard apologizing to her while he got another gun and shot her through her left eye. Byron did not call the police the next day. Instead, he waited until the day after Thanksgiving, as to not disturb the holiday the police were enjoying with their families. Ironically, Byron believed his rambling recording would be his best defense. Instead, it was his most damning evidence. Protecting his castle or setting a trap to kill, you decide. Number 4. November 22, 2018. Video surveillance taken of young mother, Kelsey Barrett, shopping for Thanksgiving dinner would be the last time she would ever be seen, and Kelsey would never make that Thanksgiving dinner. Kelsey's mother, Cheryl Lee Barrett, called the local police department on December 2nd to report her daughter missing. Cheryl Lee claimed to have been trying to reach her daughter for days, but had not had any response. Cheryl Lee had also been trying to reach her daughter's fiancé, Patrick Frazee. For days, he had not responded to the mother's desperate pleas. Police took the case seriously and proceeded to Kelsey's home. They found her car, clothes, and home untouched. The police and Kelsey's loved ones were desperate to bring her home, and they set up a missing persons hotline and put out a description of her appearance. Even though Kelsey was an experienced pilot, she did not own a plane or have free access to one. It was also very unlikely that she would leave without alerting her family, whom she was close with. The police continued their extensive investigation, complete with press conferences, none of which her fiancé Patrick attended. Although Patrick cooperated with the police, he did not reach out to the public. Patrick's continued absence eventually did arouse the suspicion of the police, and they executed a search warrant at the home of Patrick Frazee. The police did not disclose any of the findings inside of Patrick's home, but they did create a $25,000 reward. The investigation continued until on the morning of December 21st, Patrick was taken into custody and charged with murdering his fiancée Kelsey. It was revealed that Patrick was leading a double life and lived with his other girlfriend, Crystal Lee. Crystal said that on Thanksgiving Day, Patrick had called her and told her that he needed her help. Crystal drove to Kelsey's home, and blood was everywhere, covering the walls and in multiple rooms. Patrick had bashed Kelsey's head on that fateful Thanksgiving Day. Crystal said that she spent the next 4 hours cleaning the home, while Patrick allegedly disposed of the body which was never found. Number 5. This last story didn't happen on Thanksgiving, but on the day after, which in this case can truly be called a Black Friday. It was Black Friday in the year 2008, and the crowd outside of the Valley Stream Walmart in New York State was growing by the minute. The tensions and the crowd were growing so large that local police were called in for crowd control, but were not making an appearance. The store was set to open at 5 a.m., and as the hour neared, the crowd grew more frenzied. It was just minutes to opening, and the police were still nowhere in sight. The crowd of thousands began banging their fists and pressing themselves against the doors. It was too much for the 10 or so workers that were trying to perform a miracle. The weight of the crowd proved was overpowering to the glass doors, and they shattered. This event set off a rush of people in a blind rage to score bargains. Jedimite Damore was working that day and was thrown to the ground by the savage mob. Damore's co-workers and some of the members of the crowd tried to reach Damore, but unfortunately the wounds he suffered had already resulted in his death. After the crowd had been controlled, it was found that 4 other people were wounded in the stampede, including a woman who was 8 months pregnant. Isn't this too high a price to pay for a bargain television? Conclusion. Carving a turkey and preparing your holiday shopping list should both be fun. Unfortunately, murder and mayhem doesn't take a holiday. So be grateful around the holidays and hold your loved ones close. You never know who is holding the carving knife.